Okay, we're
We're
on.
good.
So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order this evening. I would like to ask for the minutes from last meeting, if that's possible.
So
Is
did
there
everyone
any
have an opportunity?
comments, questions, or updates to them?
No, I read over them. They all looked good to me.
Great.
Okay. What follows? I don't have anything.
All right, if there's no other comments or updates, we'll accept the minutes. And Brian, we can go ahead and move on.
Sure. So tonight, I know that you guys were in meetings earlier, and we had a parent meeting tonight as well that just kind of wrapped up, but wanted to utilize tonight to kind of give some updates on things that have been going on related to some of the strategic planning objectives that we had laid out within our comp plan that we have started, as well as some of those other ones that we've shared as part of the strategic plan. And then the last agenda item is actually some of the building concept renderings from Heckendorn and Shiles that we wanted to Kristen wanted to have a conversation about, so that some of our staff and people could see some of the drawings, just to get some feedback about things as a first step. We have some additional things that are going to be going out to students, but wanted to share that and get some conversation around it. So really, I'm going to kind of go through these quickly so that we can spend some of our additional time tonight on that building project concept discussion. The first one, just so that Julia and Dwayne are again aware that on the upcoming board meeting, which will be next week, we'll be asking for a motion to approve the comprehensive plan for submission. It's been sitting out for review since the last board meeting. And then we'll be looking for approval of that and then signature sign off so that we meet our November 30th submission deadline for that. There was an update to the application. One of the areas that doesn't require public comment and public posting review, so it doesn't impact any of our timelines, but there was some additional information that we had to enter about Act 13, which was passed last year, that impacted teacher evaluation components. That was an added portion of one of the sections that we have to update, but again, doesn't affect our timelines or next week's potential motion for approval. The second agenda item tonight is we had talked about over the last two meetings, sending out interest about renewing our staff and our parental participation in these meetings. Now everybody's able to watch live stream and see what we're talking about, but we have some of our when we've done this before, we've had some of our parents and community members and teachers and staff serve on the committee live to be able to provide feedback and be a part of the discussion and provide additional context or perspective on things. So I sent out the survey to our teachers and our parents and community members, asking whether or not they would be interested in serving, and we got over 50 responses saying that, hey, I would be interested. And in that, it did lay out that, hey, you may have to do some extra work. We may ask you to contribute to the group. You're going to have to come to meetings at least once a month. They could potentially be in person. So I tried to lay out all of the what ifs and still got over 50 people who said that they were interested in participating. So my question now is, with that volume, is a conversation of how do we want to structure this moving forward? There's nothing in our bylaws that says we have to have parental participation and it has to be so many people or anything. That's something that we are doing to be able to gain stakeholder feedback and have them be a part of the process. But I think there is something to be said on a discussion point about what's an effective group size to be able to have that. So kind of just wanted to open the floor for any ideas, perspectives. Hey, I think 20's good. I think 15. And then we may have to continue to discuss how to select that and balance it between staff and parents.
What about like the option of like a breakout group kind of situation?
Yeah. Brian, on those 50 responses,
mm-hmm.
do do you know what the spread of grade levels is? Like, is there one group that's heavier responses? Because, if we did, like 2 per grade level, or that gives us to
Mhm.
basically what, 20, 26. Is that, do you know what that spread was?
No, I didn't ask what grade level your child was in, but I can try to dig just through contact information from Power School if we needed to. Now that 47 or 50 people was a mix of both administration who said that they wanted to participate, teachers and staff that said they wanted to participate, and parents that said they wanted to participate. So it does run the
It's the whole group.
Yeah, it's the whole group, correct. It's not just 50 parents. So I can try to break that down. I could randomly choose just
No, I think
I could hold a bench.
Julia, what number are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I think that to have a productive dialogue in group, like, you don't want more than, say, 15, but I feel like we want as much participation and much input as we can get. And the selection process seems cumbersome. So, like, that's why I was asking, like, what about like the idea of like a breakout group-ish type of thing where we take everybody that wants to participate. Not everybody's going to show up every time either. You know what I mean? So it's like saying like, okay, well, we'll be able to have working groups of like 15 depending on who's there, who shows up. And then to like in the moment, then we can say things like, let's have a mix of admin and board and parent and whatever in each group to kind of get those discussions going. Maybe, I don't know. I just feel like going through and then selecting is like a whole part-time job in and of itself, out of 50. And I do think that it's awesome that everybody wants to participate. So like getting all of those voices and stuff, I think might be kind of cool. So I don't know. I don't even know though how that would work, if that's even a possibility.
I think that selection would be way too large because we need some consistency, and these groups are going to be intermingling. So, Brian, I'm fine with half of that. 20, 25 is good. I think that's a good selection. If you get, I would like to see a spread of administration, teachers, and parents to make sure it's not weighted heavily on one side.
Okay, then I can draw up some guidelines for things and then circle back.
Well, I want your feedback too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you can go either way. You don't want to stifle the desire to participate for people who may not be chosen. I agree that I think having 50 people in Zoom is just cumbersome to manage, and that's a lot of voices. Although we want that, you also won't have everybody come every time. So, and those who may not be chosen to be off the bat, part of it can always be a bench of if we offer to somebody and they are not able to come or communicate that they're not able to participate or commit, we can always go back to that list of submissions. So I think that mixing it through about 20 is probably a good size. And then also always encouraging everybody to watch live. That's why we stream it on YouTube, so that viewing is available.
And then maybe to Julia, to your point, when we get these bigger discussions, we could, definitely open it up for more people to put feedback. But yeah.
50 is huge. Like that is unmanageable. It is. But like if we could like I said, like create like little subgroups, that would be the only way to really make a number like that work. Because you can't, I mean, you're right, Brian, like you can't really successfully have any sort of useful discussion with that many people, especially on Zoom.
Right. And I think that when we're meeting in person, when we started doing the comprehensive plan, that's kind of the route I think we tried to take when we were in person at like TCHS for those, couple day long meetings. Was people came and then we went to different rooms, right? And we had conversations about what we wanted in the plan. Now this committee is taking more of a shape of monitoring, providing feedback on progress, and holding us accountable to the things that were in the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan. It's not so much the legwork of what do we want in it. So the purpose of the committee has sort of shifted a little bit now towards like monitoring and evaluation phases, as opposed to debate about what's the most important thing for us to meet our mission.
Cool.
Okay.
Ryan, go ahead and divvy it up. So you have administration, teachers, and parents, correct? Those are the three groups. Whatever you do, let's even it out among them all. So they'll come up, it's going to come up with like, you'll come up with 18 or 21 or whatever number, but let's just keep it even amongst them all.
Okay, I can do that. So, and then I just wanted to spend a couple minutes, next agenda was giving a couple updates on some of the items that were in the strategic plan objectives that we had shared with the board and are on that dashboard. So in terms of our map, so the first two are, and Ryan, I am going to call you out on the second one. The first two are the items, the major action plans that are in our comprehensive plan. The other ones were additional objectives that we said we were working towards over the next 3 years that we submitted as part of our sort of strategic plan to the school board. So the first one was the instructional time evaluation and master schedule at State Road. I've met with and interviewed, I believe, 5 different consulting firms. That was sort of the first step of having somebody come in, a non-biased and objective individual who has done things like this before and is going to help us work through the process and hold us accountable to the timeline that we've set for implementation to meet that and help us have conversations through some of those hurdles. Narrowed it down based on just what they were able to provide and going to be having one of the companies come and actually present to the board, hopefully in November, so that you can see what they're able to offer, what that consulting contract would look like, and have discussions about that. Ryan, I'm currently building out the initial data collection feedback forms for our parents and our students and our staff, so that we're able to start to get initial perception data about what they like about our schedule now, what doesn't work for them, when are you most alert kids in your school day, do you feel like you have ample time to meet and reach out to teachers outside of regular class time. So to start to get some of that feedback from the teachers, do you feel like you have enough planning time, all that information, so that can be utilized to drive those discussions for the next year or so as we're working through it. Ryan, you want to do the next one?
Sure. So just as a reminder, our social emotional learning goal is that an equity goal is that 100% of our students will feel like they have an adult that they can count on. And we are working and also building foundational learning opportunities for staff. So what that means is making sure all of our staff are aware of what the core standards are for social emotional learning. So we're embedding that into learning opportunities as well. So as far as the 100% goal, at our most recent in-service, we did a lot regarding relationship mapping frameworks. We talked about behavioral interventions. We talked about tier 2 interventions. I'm trying to think what else we did. It was not even that long ago. And then we will do the survey the last week of October. Our students will be surveyed on that 100%, whether they have an adult they can count on. We'll aggregate that data as a team on November 1st. And then our November 2nd in service, we will relook at that data and do a cross check with our relationship mapping that we did, and look at who is at risk, who needs supports. We'll look at it from an equity lens to see if there's any discrepancies in student demographics or anything that would warrant kind of further looking into. And then we will make plans for both tier 1 interventions and then advanced interventions for students. So excited about that. I think it was a great PD session. The feedback was good. And then our PBIS update, we just found out we could actually apply for fidelity both at tiers 1 and advanced tiers 2. So that was really exciting. We knew about tier 1, but we are able to apply for our advanced tiers. So we're just going to go for it and see if we can do that as well. So that's really awesome
Great.
and exciting stuff. Any questions? Hopefully I didn't miss anything.
No. The next bullet points, the supplemental contract and stipend discussion. I sent out interest survey to our teachers who would like to serve on this action group. We met last week for our first meeting to kind of discuss what we wanted to accomplish and what our timeline was over this school year. This really has to do with looking at all of our supplemental activities, student activities, what we offer to students. And it's really a multi-tiered project of looking at what we offer, what students are participating in, what we can offer to gain more participation of students in extracurricular activities, and then also how do we equitably fund and reevaluate the stipends that are paid to our teachers for those activities. This was more of a project that hasn't been revisited for a number of years, so it's kind of dusting off the process that was established, many years ago, and having the conversation with the teachers. And then I know that this was an item for Quest that they had brought up a couple times of needing to have a dialogue with teachers about how this is, but it's also about how do we get students participating in extracurriculars? And then for students who aren't, what can we offer moving forward? And how do we sort of standardize that process for activity approvals? One of the other goals that we had was moving some of our internal common assessments to an assessment delivery platform. Kim Tremmel worked really hard over the summer on taking our K-8 math common assessments that we used to give by paper and putting them into Performance Matters, which is our new assessment delivery system. We had our second grade graders sort of pilot taking the assessments on this platform last week, and they did it pretty successfully. And basically this platform allows us to give more accurate and more timely data back to our teachers and actionable data when our students are taking common assessments. We're able to tie specific standards and Webb's depth of knowledge and taxonomy-based indicators at the question level. So we're able to really drill down on how students are doing on a particular standard as they progress over time and take multiple assessments. So it's giving the information's available almost immediately, as opposed to in the past where we gave them by paper, pencil, and teachers had to score them. We had to sort of bring it all together and aggregate the data and then disaggregate it back out by subgroups, and it just makes the delivery of this information much easier. So we have all of our K-8 students taking their first common assessment. Second grade did it already. The other grade levels are doing it either this week or in the upcoming weeks in that assessment system. And then we're going to continue to build that process as we go through. Jen Weaver, another big thing we've been talking about is our ESSERS funding. So Jen Weaver had sent out a survey about getting feedback on how staff and how our stakeholders believed we should be investing some of our ESSERS funds. This is a requirement that we do as part of ESSERS, and it's an ongoing communication. This is going to be a topic on the board working session next week, where that feedback is shared with the board and what some of our plans are moving forwards on utilizing that ARP ESSERS funding. Another strategic objective that we had was related to communication and the deployment of our mobile app. So we used to have a mobile app with our Sharp School website. We changed our website and mass communications provider to Blackboard about 2 years ago. And with that came a new mobile app deployment project. We are almost done it and looking for just sort of a strategic point in which to launch it. It'll be another tool where parents can have it on their phones. They can get push notifications in case of emergencies or weather related things. They can access our social media feeds. They can submit attendance notes. They can see our news feeds. They can see lunch menus. They can actually log in and see information specific to their student because it's linked back to PowerSchool. So that's sort of a more encompassing app that we're going to be releasing as part of our communication goals. And we wrapped up at the beginning of the school year the deployment of our new voice over IP phone system. We did an upgrade, and the IT department finished that, and that was also part of one of our technology goals for the board. Any questions about? Oh, we went real fast through those, but any questions just because of the cursory updates that we wanted to give on some of those major projects from anybody?
Sounds good.
All right. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is for a quick discussion. It feels early, but we've already spent about 3 weeks working on our. That should actually be 22-23. I'm sorry, there's a typo on our 22-23 application for enrollment process. So we're already looking to January and when the new application is going to be released for the following school year. In past years, we kind of had a multi-layered process to our application and enrollment where families filled out an enrollment form. We ran the lottery system. We offered students seats based on that random lottery. And once they were offered seats, they were able to accept or decline the seat offer. And once they accepted the seat offer, they were given another email that said, okay, great, you accepted this seat. And now here's a link to all the paperwork you have to do. So there were kind of like these multiple gates that families had to go through, and it made things take a while because you had all these different steps in which there was this elongated period of time in between. So we had talked that one of our goals is that we would look at our orientation and enrollment process. So we started to have conversations over the summer about how do we shrink that window down from submission of application to accepting of an offer and rolling into our PowerSchool system to secure students. And there's not this like big question mark of wait time. So we worked with PowerSchool Enrollment and InfoSnap and started to rework our application where we would actually be collecting some of the paperwork up front at the time of their application. So I went through a number of other charter school application systems that also utilize PowerSchool, and many of them did it this way, where when parents actually submit their application, they're also submitting their copy of their charter school enrollment form. They're already submitting their birth certificate. They're already submitting their proof of residency documents, so that once we're prepared to run that lottery and then offer a seat, once they accept, they're done. Everything's done, and we're able to kind of roll that process a little bit quicker. One of the concerns that got brought up is it makes the application process a little bit longer, right? So as we're combining sort of two bookend processes into the front end. However, we release the application in January and we don't run the first lottery until March. So I think that the workaround for that is to just be proactive in our upcoming communication that before you do this application, you need to collect your supporting documents before, and that it's not going, and we're making it so that it won't necessarily prohibit you from submitting your application, but that we can get those documents up front and speed that process along. We also remapped everything to new contact systems. So we'll be collecting things like emergency contacts during the application process, as opposed to having to chase down families for that additional information at a later point in time. Well, they're already submitting demographic information, submit the emergency contact information at the same time. Any questions about that? That's just a change to the upcoming application and enrollment process.
Right, I think it's smart. I mean, someone else pipe in, but I think that's a great change.
Makes a lot of sense.
All right. And the last bullet item, which will probably take the rest of our time. I see Kristen's on, but I don't know if she's going to be able to talk. I don't mean to call her out.
I can talk. I'm in the car, but I can talk.
Okay. So we have been meeting with Heckendorn and Shiles. Obviously, we have a building project that's upcoming, and wanted to share. We shared some of those rendering drawings at previous board meetings, and that's out there. But wanted to give some updates of some new drawings and renderings that they had, as well as get some feedback related to the building models had areas where we wanted to build additional sort of flexible space for students. So I'm working on some feedback surveys from our students that are going to go out to our students about things like their lockers, right? Like, do you use your locker? Does everybody need a locker? What do you store in your locker? Because that's space, right? That in a new building, are you going to have your hallways being taken up by square footage of lockers that are never going to be used? Or are you able to dedicate that space towards something else that's going to support teaching and learning? Do we like the collaboratories look and feel and purpose, and would we like additional spaces like that? Because we've want that space and that flexible space for learning to happen, but we wanted to make sure that it's something that supports what our teachers are going to utilize in an effective way, and what our students find helpful for their learning. So going to pull up a couple different documents here. So can everyone see that first one? Yes. Okay. So let me zoom out. So this is just another aerial sort of breakdown of the, this is the 2-story building that will be the goal will be replacing the 2 modulars. We'll be back in that back field area. So replacing those classrooms as well as a new gymnasium. So this is a rendering of the first floor. Down on the bottom right would be the lobby of coming in. I'm going to show you some other concept pictures of what this will look like, so you'll see it to come to life a little bit more. So you have the lobby here and office space for our administration and support staff. There's a full gym along with bleacher seating. The goal was to have bleacher seating in there so that we could, one, have spectators for sports that would happen in there, but also be able to potentially have large group assemblies in there where students could either utilize floor space or potentially have grade levels sit in the bleacher areas. And then there's also boy and girl locker rooms that is positioned to also have access to the outside fields. So you would have sort of the outside field, soccer fields up above that based on how it's going to sit, and they would be able to go out onto the fields, but also inward toward the open gymnasium. There's conference areas, and then you'll see a number of classrooms sort of up and down the hallways here. The area that we're going to talk about in terms of collaboration space and what we would want those to look about are the areas in yellow, this very large hallway here, and these sort of nooks that are being built in throughout the hallways. The second floor concept, so again, students would come up the steps. There's multiple steps. They would come up to the second floor. There would be additional classrooms, again, large hallways. Overlook in the lobby space, that yellow down at the bottom right is sort of overlooking hang space over an open lobby concept. And then additional sort of nook areas up and down the hallway with the teal colors. And also a concept, again, these are all concepts of having a fitness area above the gym that sort of looks out onto the gym. So, what that would all entail is still up in the air, but utilizing that space to have additional sort of life fitness focus for our students.
Think Orange Theory.
I wasn't going to say Orange Theory, but life fitness focus that's above the locker rooms and then looking out over to the gym. there are the classroom spaces. There's an increase in classes, like physical classrooms, as opposed to what's in our modulars right now. So it does give us some room to grow. Not a ton, but it does give us a net positive in the number of classes that we would have. Any questions about that drawing first?
Has there been talk about, I know that obviously the STEM modular, not just because I work there, but the STEM modular is also a modular, which has a lifespan on it, and the time that it takes to build this building, and what the plan would be for the STEM building when that's reached its life.
We did bring that up to the architects about how can we position this building for the potential of needing an addition to it. When the STEM modular lease would be when that building would be at its like complete end of life too. So that was being taken into consideration of how the building would sort of be positioned to say, can we add an addition onto it if need be down the road, as opposed to it being positioned in a way that wouldn't facilitate that process. So that was something that we brought up to them of, we do have another modular down there based on where it's sitting. How would we utilize that sort of surface area where the STEM modular is right now for a potential addition onto this down the road? The money of that's a different thing, but that was a concern that we brought up.
I might be retired for that phase.
I might be retired too. It's okay.
But at least we're thinking about the future. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one is some of the concept ideas for what that collaboration space in the larger hallways and nooked areas could be. So the idea was that these would be bigger hallways, but then would also have the ability for classrooms on either side to sort of open up and have the space be available for extended teaching areas or group work to happen out in the hallways as well, or an area just for students to be able to collaborate and work, or flexible space for them. Along with how I think that we also had discussions on how do we provide that access from the classroom out to this space? How does that flow work? So here is one concept, and the architects tried to add some example pictures of what things can look like on the right side. So you'll see here that larger hallway. You have furniture here that is very similar. Let me see if I can scroll in. You have furniture that is very similar to that's in the collaboratory right now, with some areas that break up the space. I believe these are actually TVs that are built into these areas here, so that you're sort of segmenting down the hallway into different flexible learning spaces, but then also have the ability for students or teachers who might be working in small groups there to have something to display onto. Again, concept and idea number one.
I like it. It looks very college-y.
Right? Like you're kind of can move out of the hallway. You'll see in the hallway pictures here that you have what would be sort of locker space. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you'll have kind of locker space against some of these rooms, and then open windows for visibility out into the hallway, right? So if you're a teacher and you want to let students out into the hallway to kind of work in these areas, we want to treat them like young adults, but you also want to have sort of a line of sight onto them as well. So there would be that opening there. Concept 2 was very similar, just a kind of a different look to things. 3 is a little bit different. It becomes it's a little more individualized. They changed some of how the breakdown of the hallways would be. And this actually has more open, look more at the how do I see out of the classroom and into the hallway. I don't know if this one was an all window. There were concepts of a big opening window with slide doors to even garage door type openings. So like you can actually open up your classroom and have it sort of bleed out into the hallway if that space was needed.
So can I stop right there,
Yep.
Brian, for a second? So this is so exciting. Like, I love this part of projects because the vision is, it just makes it so much more to look forward to, and we can be creative. And so when I heard garage doors, and you can open garage doors to open space so that you can spread your kids out and work, it sounds amazing to me. But there's this reality, like we would hate to say this would be a really cool 21st century space, and then teachers never use it or never open it up that way. So just curious with the teachers on the line, like if you had the opportunity to open up one side of your wall to big, large space for projects and so forth, is that something you think teachers would utilize? Or do you think at least seeing them from a window and you send a group outside that you would like the enclosure more? Just curious.
And just so you know, these hallways are pretty wide. Like they're pretty wide hallways, just so in terms of like conceptualizing the space that's in between the classrooms. It's not the 300 modular hallway.
Right.
I can't really envision myself using something like that. Simply because of what could be going on out in the hallway is already distracting. If you're in a classroom, just the sheer amount of space is really what I kind of get stuck on, I think.
Okay.
With having a garage door. Like, I love the concept of sending out a smaller group if they want to work out there, and opening up some space inside the classroom, but opening up my entire classroom wall, I kind of get stuck on a little bit.
It's funny because I figured that's what most of high school, middle school teachers would say. So I get what you're coming from, and I do think it could be really distracting. I go back and forth, but I appreciate the feedback because I think, you guys are the ones that are going to use it, so your feedback means everything. Is there anybody else?
Yeah, I am obsessed with this. This is awesome. It actually reminds me of a school that I used to go like in college and observe at. But it was like a 5th grade wing where they had the garage doors. What was cool about those doors, it's like you didn't have to have them open because they were still like glass, like not glass, I guess, but well, maybe glass, like clear, you could see. So some teachers would open the garage doors and then others would just be able to like see their kids out there. I would be concerned with like, say, my class of 28 and just noise.
How often, when you saw that at the other school, how often did you see the garage door open?
I would say it was really only, it wasn't every time, but when it was open, it was awesome. It was like so cool. And this was a while ago too, so it was like very new age. But I think even in like just with Marielle, I would be nervous to do it often just for noise.
Right.
Because even when I'm putting kids in the hallway, it's a lot of the times like, hey, let me leave my classroom. Oh, I can hear my classroom, but at least my hallway is quiet. And then I pop back in and then my classroom's quiet, but then the hallway, yeah. So I think it's a really cool concept. But I also don't know how often I would use it.
Okay. Like, I'd be curious how much it would cost.
If like say like Marielle and I have classrooms across the hallway and we're both sending like smaller groups outside, I think it would be hard for both of us to have that garage door open because then just the sheer amount of noise that group work does already, that might be a lot. But it is
fair.
I mean, Kristen, if it's a huge cost, I don't know. I mean, but if it's not really that big of a difference and it would be a really cool thing for a couple teachers and it's not that big of a cost difference, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be a problem, but
I definitely think that we'd have to tint it from one side to the other because I'm just thinking safety wise, if there's an active shooter or something or doing a drill like that, we wouldn't want somebody to be able to see straight in. So if we tint it from the one side, then you wouldn't necessarily be able to see out from, you know what I mean? Like we'd have to be creative in that way. But I do think that it's a cool concept. I just don't know if, I don't think the cost, because even if we put windows in there so that you guys can see out, because I think what I'm hearing in this conversation is you like the idea of a large space out there for kids to work. And I think that is important too, just the way the kids are using the collaboratory right now. But you have to have a way to see them. And so I think what I'm hearing is whether it's a garage door, that it has to be something that you can enclose and break the distraction from what's happening in the hallway.
What about one of the doors kind of like going from the collaboratory out to the outdoor classroom? Those like full accordion doors.
Oh, like we have in the collaboratory?
Yeah, so you could open 2 if you wanted to, or 3 if you wanted to, or whatever.
Yeah, we even talked about doing that in some rooms and like not piloting it, but like the teachers that would want to do it more often or their subjects would be more open to some kind of concept like that, maybe having something like, so that it's a variety of rooms depending on teaching style.
The problem with doing it that way would be when you have teacher turnover, would that teacher care?
Yeah.
You know,
that sliding door in the collaboratory is really expensive. Like,
Okay.
I think it would be less expensive to do the garage door or the windows with a wall.
yeah.
So the option 4 here that's just shown is more of a pergola type concept. Same idea, just making the middle of the hallway look a little bit different.
And more of
Nice.
like an
This looks-
outside,
Yeah.
more of an outside feel inside school.
And 5 was more like stackable. It's not sort of individual based furniture. It was more sort of stackables where people are sitting. You see this more in like library space, in like at library spaces where you can see in the middle picture here, it still gives places to sit, but it's not sort of individual. Looks more artsy of putting together that type of furniture concept. The last one shown is the or what the stairwell would potentially look like. So you would have that first floor lobby walk-in and then open stairwell concept up to the second floor. And as they get to the top of the second floor would sort of be a space like almost like a little amphitheater space seating at the top, as well as the seating area underneath the stairs.
So there's a couple things that, obviously, like the collaboratory, we utilize that space for so many different things. We even used it for dance, right? And so having all of these spaces, like if a kid needed intervention or there's a little nook for a teacher to tutor or a student to tutor another student, like that, this is great space. I do worry about little nooks or big spaces where kids can hang out and what that means to, discipline and things like that. So I am curious in some of your feedback around open space.
Kristen, I would just say that I think the open space is better than some of the little nooks, because the open space, you're going to be able to see more. It's the little nooks that people can go to that, sometimes you're just not able to monitor as easily.
Fair.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think the hallway ones are awesome because it's so easy, even like in between classes, for all the teachers to stand by the doors. But then when you get to all the nooks, the nooks is where the students like to look for as it is. So it's almost inviting them to kind of hide away in those.
Yeah, you see
So
that little nook right there that Brian's showing? Like,
Yeah.
I was thinking about when we had COVID and when teachers try to teach sometimes small groups, it's distracting from the big space. So it gives them like a little space to go into, but I can totally see your perspective. And I am worried about like little nooks and what can happen in there.
Yeah. So I think they would just have to.
These areas aren't necessarily private, right? They're still right in the middle of the hallway. They're not able, it's not like it's hiding in the back of the auditorium that's a closed room. They're still, teachers can still at their door see all of what's going on in the hallways here. I think that the concept here was, can we continue to sort of utilize some of the hallway space for additional flexibility?
Okay, then I was probably just looking at it wrong. I thought a lot of them were kind of by like the stairways, which would be harder, but I think as long as they're in the hallways, like still by classrooms, it'd be fine.
Yeah, I think the things in the stairwell was more of the lobby where you would walk in and you would see like high top tables by the stairs as you walk in, or once you get to the top of the steps here in this concept rendering, there's a window here that looks out, and there's three seats here that they can sit and work independently and be at the top of the steps there. So still all open. Not when I said nooks, I didn't mean sort of private nooks.
I'm curious about the lockers from people. I mean, I like the concept of, I don't think kids are utilizing lockers as much as we think they are. And the concept of like the YMCA, where you put in a number, you use it for the day, you know the number, and then you can clear, like when you go to a spa, something like that. Do you think that majority of the kids would prefer that over being assigned a locker because they don't use it and it's wasted space?
It's definitely wasted space, at least for high school. I'm not sure about middle school, but I would say maybe 10 or 15% of my students actually use a locker, honestly.
And I see very few middle schoolers going to their lockers.
Fair.
I can say that I have a 9th grader and a 5th grader, and neither one of them use them. So
Okay. And we're going to have a survey to the kids just to get accurate numbers, but I was curious about adult perception of it. So that's good to know.
Kristen, the only thing that kind of concerns me about the, you put in a code, you get the locker for the day type of thing too, is, kids going and putting something in a locker, then giving the key to somebody else to go pick up something from a locker. Like we can't, and I guess they could give each other combinations and everything too. But how do we monitor who's in what space?
Yeah, I think that happens regardless. I think some lockers even have no lock, right?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Do that anyway.
Yeah. As I started talking, then I started realizing that it's probably no different than what's going on now. So
Yeah.
You could use one of these nooks for a bunch of lockers, almost like when you go to Hershey Park and you have like go into like a whole area that's just lockers.
I think when we were talking to Jared, that is what he wanted to do. Like, he doesn't want it to take
Line
up.
hallways.
Yeah, for sure. Not that.
My other question is, what's the concept of this? Is this like a middle school upstairs, high school downstairs, or vice versa? Or is it intermingled with all of the different, or like by class, like English and history and math?
I don't think we got that far. I think it was more about how many classrooms and what they would look like. That's a good question though. What do you prefer? Do you prefer it to have middle school, high school subjects? Do you prefer to have what it looks like now, where it's by grade? Like, it's a good feedback.
I mean, I personally love being with all of the science teachers, middle school and high school, because we even collaborate between middle and high school. So I don't know if that's something that other subjects do. I mean, anything's better than like the one-off, we've got like one high school math class in the 400 building and everybody else in the 300, like it's gotta be better than that regardless. But I like the concept of teacher collaboration as much as, student collaboration.
I think it also combines things in one building. I think even the drawings you have multiple stairwells down it. So it could be as easy as going out your classroom down a stairwell. I think that when we get to the physical plant organization of classrooms, we would have to be mindful of what we wanted. And that's something we can bring back to the department leads. But when you're talking about what's going in here in terms of English, math, and social studies predominantly, like those aren't specialized based classes where they can pretty much all look very, very similar in terms of the four walls and what needs to be provided in terms of casework, storage, and technology. It's when we get into, the engineering or the science classrooms that you end up having to have something that's a little bit more specialized. So it gives it a little bit more of a uniformity, the availability for more uniformity across this, as opposed to saying like this area has to be specific to science because we need sinks and burners and gas lines and all of those types of things. The last thing that I'm sharing right now was just some of the drawings and concept pictures that that Hackendoorn and Schaus shared with us of different workspaces and what schools have done and some businesses. And we kind of went through, and this was more for like an ooh-ah effect of, what kind of which pictures bring emotions out for you? Like, which are you like, this is really cool, or, oh, this is ugly and I wouldn't like this, or there's no way that this would work. So these were just some of the things that we had paged through with them and looked at. So when we were getting towards like, how can we have our classroom open? Well, here's an idea of how one classroom can open in a school out to a larger space. And how do you have sort of a center area for working with multiple classrooms feeding out into that collaborative space? What does it look like to have, lockers down a hallway with sort of that storefront windowing in a classroom? So they tried to pull pictures together for us for some of the things that we had been talking about. We talked about nooks, so they pulled up, there's that reading nook concept of the breakfast seat, right? That some people have in their kitchens. These were sort of when we were talking about how do we need to have the space that's in the hallways be somewhat of a private area? If you're working with a student and providing remediation and intervention, do you want some type of privacy to that? Whether it's for comfortability of the student or just whatever you're working with them on. So these were some concepts of how to provide some privacy and pod-based concepts within the hallways. I thought this middle one was felt like you were like in a glass elevator. We were talking about how certain classroom looks could potentially be, color concepts, there is brain science out there to what types of colors should be in classrooms for active learning and to not overstimulate kids. And then finally, this was sort of the locker concept ideas. How do we be more effective with our space for lockers? And storage for students and for staff too, and it not be, the legacy based 3x3 lockers that we have right now. And then some additional shots of just some privacy options and seating options that came from Corbett, which is one of our furniture providers. So cool stuff. Still early, but going to, I think, be moving forward with getting some additional feedback on and keep teasing out some of these concepts. Anything else you want to talk about, Kristen, on this, or questions you want to ask of the group?
No, those were my big main questions. Anything else the group wants, as they saw those pictures, want to give us feedback on?
Well, I
You
can
got
say,
any
like,
close
as
to the
somebody who's
timing?
oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I'm teaching an elective right now in a multi-purpose room with 32 kids in the class, and the overhead lighting and the acoustics are terrible and everybody's in masks. So I'm like drooling over these images of these open spaces and being able to have that type of environment. So I just think that this was really beautiful. It's great. Looks great.
Thanks, Julia. Marielle, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. I was just wondering if you had any more like timing? Is this like a 5-year project?
It's going to really depend on bond, when we can get the money. We were hoping 3 years, but you know, everything's under a time crunch, whether the bond comes through, when the bond comes through. It's always about money in the end, right? Like, when can we get the money to do it? So we'll have a better idea once we understand the timeline for money. I'm hoping 3 years, but that's the goal. We'll see.
Brian, I think
Anybody else? Okay.
we could start building next week. No, just kidding.
I wish.
Right? Right.
Great. That was it for the agenda items for this evening.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, it looks like our next meeting, if I'm right, is November 9th. Correct?
Yep.
7:30. Brian, you're going to put together that how you want to get that group together. That would be great.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything before we go? Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here. This is awesome. And the feedback.
All right.
We'll call it a meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.